be warned, the neo-shamanic journey is not all it's cracked up to be. In modern shamanism today, there seems to be a great emphasis on the idea of the journey. This was developed over a long period of time, beginning probably with Michael Harner, who was an anthropologist who set up the idea of modern shamanism in the West for Westerners. And I wanted to talk about this because although the idea of the shamanic journey isn't unknown in my culture, it's been seen in a very, very different way. The idea originally came supposedly from Native American sources, when, as far as I can find, both through research and through talking to Native Americans myself in the past, over a number of years, it seems that it was never used in the way modern shamanism tends to use it. So this, I think, is useful to address. I often address this in my workshops, but I don't think I've ever totally devoted a video to talking about this so far on my channel. So it does need talking about, because a lot of people like the idea of journeying, where usually in modern shamanic circles, they use a drum and everybody, the words come to mind, trips out to go into the other world. That's something that sort of actually comes to mind when I'm talking about this, but that's how it seems. It seems that people want to escape into a journey. They want to go somewhere else other than this world, because naturally it's nice to escape into your imagination and to escape into a place that you believe ancient people escaped to. Now, this isn't entirely true, because prehistoric ancient people didn't actually need to escape as such. They didn't need to run from all these civilized trimmings and trappings and relationships and situations and all the things that this civilized world feeds us with, because all of that simply wasn't there. There's a whole education that is needed about the other world, and it's a whole different area of understanding than what most neo-shamans believe. Going into the other world is a practice that has been undertaken by many real, true shamans in the past, but it also used to creep into the dreams and into the lives of ordinary tribal folk. And recent tribes have talked about this, and there is no record of journeying, as we might say, in the way that neo-shamans believe it was done. From the glamorous with its ayahuasca ceremonies in hot climes to the intensely and piously devout. From the dramatic, where people clearly believed that ancient folk were built that way, to the plain absurd, where we think journeying could just be a leisurely bit of fun. We partake of neo-shamanic journeying because we believe it will re-establish links with natural ancient community. Moreover, that it will reconnect us with the natural world and the ancient otherworld. My great-grandfather called it spirit travelling. I think that's the way I still tend to see it. I think it can be used as a focal point if you want to get your head together. But what we're not told in neo-shamanic circles is the fact that there are hidden dangers that lie in a place that used only to be accessible to the experienced otherworld traveller, i.e. the shaman. So when wannabe medicine people who know nothing whatsoever about the makeup of the ancient otherworld begin messing around with elements, influences and shadows of the otherworld during journeys, they're actually asking for trouble, having their minds and emotions meddled with. And they're certainly asking to have their mental health meddled with. And while some might say, well, I've been journeying for years and nothing untoward has ever happened to me, well, I would beg to differ. Most people who involve themselves with neo-shamanism and neo-shamanic journeying have had very hard times in their past, difficult childhoods, and have had a lot of trauma and conflict going on. So when they partake of a journey and they don't understand the influences of the other world, then they're really giving themselves over to some very difficult influences, some very difficult shadows. And as a seasoned medicine man, probably the last of his kind in the West, I would issue a warning about neo-shamanic journeying. It's better if you take care when you're thinking about doing a neo-shamanic journey with a neo-shaman. It's a warning because it contains influences that can alter the state of your mind in terms of mind control, your emotions can be upset. And what happens is if you've been traumatized in the past, then you could find that this will affect you even more detrimentally, because those problems, at least I found this, can get a whole lot worse. So be warned. The neo-shamanic journey is not all it's cracked up to be, and it can be quite dangerous to your mental and emotional health. Because we need to belong, and because we so badly need to restore that connection to the natural world and the natural ancient otherworld, and because we've developed a specific needy, along with an everything's going to be all right kind of attitude, we tend to turn to whatever's on offer, recreating it and restructuring it as we go. This means we embellish and exaggerate everything from the past. We are lured into playing on the dramatic and the staged, because we are human after all. And some of what we get into would, I think, be better served as a theatre play. In fact, it could be quite effective as a theatre play. So while we're culturally starved of what we don't have and lured to be what we are not, we must content ourselves with what we've become, the eternal wannabe. And when we say the other world, we are talking about a place that is behind our eyes. It's in our souls, and we access it through the imagination, through our own psychological makeup. So our own psychological makeup is extremely, and I cannot emphasize this enough, extremely relevant in this exercise. Because we've got to realize that we're going through our own personal ideas, beliefs, dreams, thoughts, feelings. We're going through our own personal world. And I suppose really that's what the other world is made up of, our own personal worlds. But we tend to think that by accessing the other world through a shamanic journey, we are going to access something that is not only age-old, It's a place that everyone could go to. Now, this isn't strictly true because we're going through our own psychological makeup, and that makeup is full to the brim of all that we are on the inside, behind our eyes. It's almost like the world we never see. And when I've conducted spirit traveling exercises with people in a rather more detailed way, I've often found that people tend to get stuck there. They start to go on a journey, if you like, and they tend to get stuck. And I have the unenviable task as a medicine man of trying to bring them back and administer some sort of common sense, which you might call healing, to the situation, where I've got to explain to them what is actually happening. And when I say they get stuck, I mean they get involved, too involved and enmeshed in their own psychological workings within their own imagination. And this is something that can be very uncomfortable. So when neo-shamans conduct journeying exercise, for some reason they probably take them somewhere where it's all very modelled on what they believe natives would do. Remember those words, what they believe natives would do, not what real natives would do, because they didn't do it like that. It didn't work like that. And I think it's doing far more damage than good when you are experimenting in this way and you're not taking into consideration all the things you might access via your imagination. For a start, most of us are traumatized in the modern world. Most of us have conditions that we'd rather not talk about. Most of us are in denial about different things. Most of us have had a difficult childhood. Most of us have had trouble with our families and with our partners and friends and work colleagues, etc., etc., etc. And all of this is going to be fed into what we call the shamanic journey. So what we've got to do is understand, to begin with, how we can do it and enjoy it without leaving out any of the problems we've got. And that's a difficult task. And that is why when you do it in a detailed way, you have to be careful that you're not just accessing all these fears and everything. Because most of us are in denial these days, most New Agers are definitely in denial. It's a strange phenomenon that most people don't actually mind being duped by the New Age. They don't seem to mind acting the shaman and calling themselves shaman. It's not that we need to sink ourselves into the mud of what we are and go over and over it. That's not what I mean. We've just got to take it into consideration. It's like if you imagine going along a road and you've got to go through some muddy water. So you're driving along a road and you've got to go through some muddy water. And you think, now, is that going to be deep? Am I going to be able to get my car through that? You've got to consider that that muddy water is there. You don't have to stay in the mud. Journeying through the other world involves journeying through muddy difficulties with a view to transforming and discovering your natural, normal self. Let's understand that this is what spirit travelling is all about and what it was always about. Remember, the other world is a place that is composed of all that you are behind your eyes, in your dreams, in your thoughts, in your feelings. All those things you don't see in everyday physical life, that's what the other world is, and that's what you'll be accessing. To deliver yourself to a place that's ancient and age-old. Remember, our ancestors never did it as the neo-shamans did it. They did very little as the neo-shamans did it. And that's something to remember. So the portals on a journey used to be significant and still are. A portal to the upper world is represented by a vine that travels all the way up a tree and it takes you to the upper world. This is the substance used in many folk tales, carrying the perils and the warnings about travelling to the upper world where you could lose yourself to the spirits there. And even if the tree has been reduced to a short trunk, with vines hardly going anywhere at all, you still have to be careful, because it can still take you away from yourself. Similarly, the holes at the base of a tree can be equally lethal, carrying you down and down into the lower world beneath the earth. There you might meet the residents of the lower world, the little woodland folk, and sometimes these would be out to test you. In some folk tales, if you underwent a change for the worst, it could be said that you'd been down to the lower world where you'd had some kind of encounter with the woodland folk who gave you a test you didn't pass, and they changed you forever. Try, if you can, to come to one of my workshops, because then we can go over things like this in person, and it's much easier because then we can talk about it more. Don't be afraid of looking at all that you are inside, and don't be afraid of moving on from it. We have to look at it, look it in the face, look it in the eye, see it as it is, and then move on. And then we can look everything else in the eye and see everything else as it truly is too. Being a wannabe, quite simply, in a nutshell, is not being yourself. It's trying to be something so that you can feel better about yourself when there's nothing better than being yourself. It means you are in denial, and it means you are dissociating from the person who you truly are. And it's time to get back to that. It's time to have some pride in who you are. Have a bit of self-respect. Find it, use it, know it. New Age wannabes, I always say, have travelled to the upper world via a very strong vine, and there they've got stuck because they've come into close contact with spirits there who've given them a hard time, and they simply cannot change. The other world is composed of many, many things that are both exciting and daunting. I'm going to go to the lower world and find this, and that is like going down into the depths of the things that you might push down inside you. And if you say you're going to the upper world, then going to the upper world is rather like going up in the clouds. And a lot of neo-shamans can actually do this. And they take everyone else there. A little blissful ride on a cloud, floating along. It's not like that. The upper world isn't like that. It can mesmerize you. It can take you away from what you are. It can, it can strengthen your denial. That's what the upper world can do. So if you want to strengthen your denial and not see yourself as you are and not enjoy what you can find of the ancient other world, then do it in the good old neo-shamanic way. There's absolutely no mystery about woodland anymore. There are no messages that are given from the woodland. It's all very nice. A lot of people like to escape to the wood, and yes, it is comforting. It's beautiful. But in the old way, there were things that you might just fear. There are things that you might be wary of. And there was certainly a lot of curiosity about the beings that lived there, the spirits. There was a mystery, and it's nice if we can attempt to return that to our souls. The trees, with their upper world and lower world meanings of ancient days, mean something to me. There's an awful lot in the woodland that means something to me, but it's very, very different, I guarantee, from the way neo-shamans see it. And it would be nice if you could take that on board and understand what I mean when I'm saying this. Try to think a little bit differently about it. See it as somewhere that is mystical and magical and mysterious. Somewhere that gives you yourself back. remember that we humans, we modern humans, believe we can do what we like with the natural world. In the same way, neo-shamans believe they can do what they like with the other world. This needs some thinking about. This needs some getting your mind around, because it's actually true. In the natural world, we destroy trees and then manage that by replanting them. And maybe I'm doing a similar thing, really, replanting the ideas that ancient people once had about journeying, about travelling, spirit travelling to the other world, by pointing out what neo-shamans do to the other world with a view to redressing the balance. So how do we stay safe when we want to journey to the other world? For a start, we've got to recognise that when we go there, we could meet anything. And largely we're going through ourselves, through our own imaginations to get there. So we do as well to travel there with a view to changing something, with a view to having an experience that has a bit of depth about it, not just an airy-fairy, floaty, fluffy experience that'll take you to the upper world and back again. Remember that it's all about portals. Trees provide natural portals. The standing stones of the world, built back in the Neolithic age, were an artificial means of using a portal to find the other world, creating or implanting the idea that humans could reach the other world by their own volition rather than by what was provided by the natural world to get there. Yes, it started all the way back in the Neolithic age. If we're going to go there, we need to use our imagination constructively, and we need to take on board the idea that the upper world and lower world are both full of rather mischievous and adventurous spirits, and what they show to us could add to what is already going on for us. We're not going to be healed overnight by going to the upper world or lower world. What's going to happen is that whatever we're suffering from, I suppose you could say, that these spirits might well add to it because of our ignorance, because of our refusal to try spirit travelling in the age-old way. So the message is, I suppose, take care. Take care, give it all you've got. Listen to what I'm saying and see if you can make some changes in your life by finding out what the upper and lower world have to say to you about what is going on for you today, now. So, yeah, let's go further with this. I think this is just really like an introductory. It's just me talking basically about what journeying is. It's not what it's cracked up to be, but it can be good, it can be exciting, and it can be a healing measure if you do it in the right way. So watch out for more videos where we can explore this, and we'll go on, shall we say, a journey together and do some good old-fashioned spirit travelling in the good old-fashioned, ancient, safe way. Okay, thanks for watching.